Okay, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to break down my recent shot that I did based off the Shōgun TV series. This is one of my favorite TV series of all time, and I feel like the visual effects are superb and they're just perfect. I saw this shot in one of the episodes and I remembered it specifically, so I decided I wanted to try to recreate it. So I'm going to break down all my project files, Blender and Nuke, although I will say most of the work comes in Nuke, but I'll get to that in a bit. So let's start out in Blender. Here we are. As you can see, it's a very simple environment and scene right here. So let me talk about the camera first. So the show used a 35mm lens and they used the ARRI Alexa LF. So luckily in Blender, they have a camera preset right here. And right here you can see the ARRI Alexa LF. So I just clicked that and I got the correct sensor width. And then how I figured the 35mm out is I just looked up what lens they used, and they used it was like some Hawk name, I think, and it was 35mm. And as far as the camera animation goes, I pretty much just eyeballed it and looked at the original shot and how I got it to rotate to stare at a specific point. I called it camera pivot, but it's just an empty, and I placed it roughly where I wanted it to rotate around. So I kind of did the back of the model here. And what you do is you parent it to the camera, and then whenever you rotate, it rotates around that axis. So here, just playing in real time right here. And then whenever we're compositing and adding the background, there'll be some nice parallax happening. Let me go ahead and go to rendered view here. So the lighting is very simple in this. Okay, sorry, the textures were not loaded for some reason. So here's the model from Megascans. Here's the setup I did. I just used roughness, color, ambient occlusion, and normal map. I lowered the IOR to 1.1, and then everything else I left default. So this is a Megascans model, and that's the closest thing I could find to the real shot. Pretty simple setup as far as the model goes. This is the only model I have in the environment. But let's talk about lighting a little bit. So I used let me show you what it looks like. Go to film, turn the transparent off. So this is the HDRI I used. I figured it was the closest thing I could find to a very dense forest in Japan. Okay, so here's the base HDRI right here. Obviously, this is not quite the lighting of the reference, so a little trick you can use, instead of using extra lights in the scene, you can add reflectors. So what a reflector does, as you can see down here, whenever I turn it on, it is just a flat plane that has a base texture with a roughness all the way up to 1, and it's got a 0.33 color. And whenever I turn it on and off, you can see that it's bouncing light from the environment onto the model. And a little trick here, so how you control the intensity of this is just by changing the base color. So I can go all the way up to white and it'll reflect more, or I can go all the way down to black and it's basically like it's off. So this one I used a value of 0.33, and I think it's a 1:1. Yeah, so I just added a straight up flat plane, and then you added the texture. And then the second one right here, this reflector too, I just duplicated the thing, and then I made it, actually, no. So I basically just aligned it up to where, let me show you what it does. So whenever you move it around, as you can see on the right in the render view, it just makes it darker or lighter. So it pretty much just kind of adds some fill light or bounce light. So now that we got the bounce lighting correct, I felt like it's a little bit too strong, so I added some gobos here, just to kind of help reduce it. Again, same thing, add a plane, make it black, high roughness, and then just kind of move it around in the scene. So these are my two gobos. If I take them off, maybe I could have just lowered the reflector, but I just decided to add more gobos. Anyways, so now I'm adding some extra lights here, although they're extremely subtle. So this top one right here, it just kind of adds a little bit of ping right here in the corner. And then this one right here kind of adds a little bit of rim light right here on this corner. It didn't need it, but I added them anyways just because I thought I added a little bit of texture to the lighting. So that is pretty much the Blender setup. And then for the lights itself, I made them a blue color. The new Blender 4.5 kind of has some different settings in the lights, so still kind of getting used to those. Now for the render settings, I just did 1024 with a 0.03 threshold. I used the denoise. I did max light bounces, no motion blur or depth of field. I do that in post. Make sure whenever you're running an animation, if you have the memory for it, use persistent data, which I did use it. I don't know why it's unchecked. So make sure that's on. This is the format that it was filmed in, except it was in 4K, but I have Nuke non-commercial, so I can't render out in 4K, so there's no reason to have that. I just did 72 frames, 24 FPS, open EXR multi-layer, and then let me go to compositing real quick. I denoise all my passes, which the passes that I used are right here. You can see the ones that I used. I ended up not using the crypto mat, I don't think. So I could have taken off a few of these, but these are the ones I kind of go with most of the time. And then I set my output for the denoise passes. That pretty much covers all of Blender. So it's a very simple setup, but most of the work is in Nuke, which I'll show you right now. Okay, so here we are in Nuke. Here's my main script right here. So I did a matte painting right here, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the matte painting Nuke file first. So here it is right here. These are all images from, I believe, Unsplash. Yeah, Unsplash right here. So these are the ones I decided to go with. These are assets from Action VFX. So let me go over the matte painting of the environment first. So in the reference right here, you can see there's a boulder right here. So I kind of wanted to add that in there. So that's where I got this image from. So all I did was I copied this roto that I did of the rock. I pre-multed it. I added this node called Edge Organic. As you can see, what it does, it kind of breaks it up to make it look a little bit more natural. Now, I know the stone is a natural cut and it's supposed to have sharp lines, but some of them looked a little bit too perfect because the roto, can only be so organic. So I added that. Then I unpremulted it. That's why you unpremult and premult before you do any color grades if it does not take up the whole frame. So as you can see, kind of made some color adjustments, some gamma, keep going down, lifted up the blacks a little bit, and then you pre-mult it again when you're done, so that way there's no color going off the frame. I use this background 3D node right here, so let me show you. So here's the projection setup. So as you can see, I have the environment with some fog assets and then the rock. So this node right here just automatically projects it onto a sphere for you. So that way there's some parallax whenever the camera is moving. And by the way, I exported the camera from Blender, which I will make a full tutorial on how to do that in another video probably soon. So if there's any questions on how to do that, it'll be answered in that video. But anyway, so that's the rock. Pretty simple. Now for the matte painting of the forest background. I just looked up Japanese forest and I found this one that looked sort of close to the reference. It wasn't exactly, but it was the closest one I could find. So took a keyer, inverted it, and made it blue so I could keep some of those bright highlights. And then I pinged out the sky a little bit to make it kind of look like an overcast day. Added some diffusion into the sky, some more overall diffusion, a hue correct to take out some of the blue or the greens, and a little bit of the blue. So this trick right here, this AP vignette, what I did was I made it a blue color, and what it did, it might be kind of hard to tell in the video. It reformats it in this node, by the way, that's why it kind of did that. But this basically kind of does a vignette effect with a color, if you select a color right here. Like if I go more, you can see it has the color. So basically this is a color correct node, but it kind of does it more on the edges. And here's just some color corrects. I stenciled out the part where I didn't want it as much. Kind of hard to explain step by step of this process because I went back and forth like dozens of times to kind of adjust the colors to get them close to the reference right here. So then there was a little kind of bright fog right here, so I added that right here. Another one there. Yep, and then you match the blacks, lift them up, and then project it. Pretty simple setup there. Mainly just color corrections and some diffusion happening. That's pretty much it. Now we're going to get into the smoke asset here. So the smoke kind of stenciled out where I wanted it. I did the color trick that I've shown on videos before. So before and after. And then highlight, suppress, some more grades, project it. And then the same thing for this one over here. Let me show you. So here's the before and after. Some grades. So pretty much it's the projection setup was probably the hardest. And the reason why I did this in another script, if you have a scanline render, it's going to be heavy. And my Nuke kept crashing and becoming really slow whenever I was trying to preview it. So that's why I just saved it as a DMP, digital matte painting. And then what you do is you render it out. And here's the final right here. Let me play that for you. So here's what the final looked like. And then whenever you go to your main script, you just bring this read node and use that. And all of these nodes are going to be in a different file. Oh, and by the way, whenever you render out of a scanline render, you want to make sure to remove the motion forward because these are very heavy channels that make the file really large. So that covers the matte painting part. So let's go to the main file and I'll go over how I composited the CG. So as you can see, even though I did it in a different file, I still had some more adjustments whenever I was doing all this. And again, my process is not streamlined, so I go back and forth between different parts of my scripts at all times. Like I'm not going through doing all this and then doing all that. I go back and forth, make a little bit of tweak. Even if the tweak is just adding one grade node, I'd still go back and forth. And while I'm looking at reference, so I'm constantly looking at the reference and going back to mine. So what I did was I had my beauty rebuild. I only had the glossy and diffuse, which I made no changes to the glossy. I did make some changes to the diffuse. I used a PMAT to get this sort of alpha right here. And then this one down here. And what I did was I brightened that up because I felt it was a little bit too dark. And then I darkened down here. I made a little bit of adjustment on the direct. So I just kind of made it a little more contrasty. So you add them together, make sure to copy the alpha back in there. If that's not there, there's no alpha. Added the blacks match here. Make sure you pre-mult so there's no, I take this off. As you can see, it bleeds over into the environment, which we don't want. So we want to isolate it just on the object. And then again, I'm doing the AE dirt CG trick. So let me gain up here. So before and after, it's adding some breakup to it, which you use your camera from Blender. And then here are my settings for this node right here. I copied in that to get to the P, the capital P, so that way this works. I could, do it otherwise, but it's just a little bit easier because this is already set up to do that one. I turned it into aces. Added some light wrap. See if you can see it. Yeah, very subtle. So, and then let me go over. So so that's what it looked like initially when I overed it, like that. So obviously you can see there's some major differences now between that. So that's where I made some changes. So let's start from those. So adding some more blue to the corner, darken down the bottom. Looks like I added a little bit of green because maybe I took too much out. Again, I'm just kind of going over my script. I'm not going step by step because this is not a tutorial. This is more of a breakdown. So I'm making just subtle changes. So as you can see before and after, it's subtle, but like it makes a big difference. So here is a node, the anamorphic one. This is how I got the match the extreme blurring on the edges. So before and after, this node is really nice. It's Aitor Echeveste's node. Again, he's the one that made this node right here. So it's the same guy. So here are my settings for this node, and again, I copied the depth channel from this to this. That way it would blur it out. So to get the astigmatism, which is the blurring of the edges, you just crank up the astigmatism node, as you can see on the left. So I thought a value of 7 worked pretty good. Again, keep my script tidy and clean and fast. Just keep the RGB over that on top. And then now, if you look at the reference, there is a raindrop that fell. So to make things a little bit easier on me and go by faster, I just rotoed that out and did some color adjustments and then just overed it on top of mine. So that way it would look realistic, and also it would be the same one from the plate. And then this one, because I did it separately, because I did not want astigmatism on my render, I added another one down here, just an overall one, to kind of give it the nice realistic looking depth of field. This node is Lightroom for Nuke. Look it up on Nukepedia. It's really nice. It just makes color grading a little bit easier. So just pretty subtle adjustments here. So this node right here is doesn't work all the time. You have to constantly set it up, but I kind of copied the color of the plate to get it onto mine right here, which is this is the final right here. So I did a color transfer node, but it kind of breaks every time, so you kind of have to keep playing with it. Like I can't really show you. Okay, so there we go. So now it just kind of mixes in the color a little bit. Then I added a chromatic aberration just on the highlights, so you can key out the highlights right here and then use that as a mask. Because if you look at the reference, it's kind of like there's no chromatic aberration here, but you see it a lot right here on the edges of the bright highlights. So that's why I keyed it off to match the reference. See before and after. Added a little bit of glow, very subtle. Vignette, and then some grain. And that pretty much wraps up the shot. So as you can see here, oh, I forgot to mention, here are my camera right here. So that's what I used for my matte painting. I kind of found some of these ones, but I ended up going with this one. And then here's a rock I found, but yeah. So here's the final. Okay, so here is mine versus the show's. Obviously it's not a 1-to-1, but I kind of wanted to capture those stone lanterns that are in the forest in Japan, along with a very cool yet misty kind of forest environment. So obviously, you know, there's some major differences that are not present, but I figured I kind of captured the essence of it. So I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of my shot. And if you want me to recreate another shot from another movie or show, let me know which one down below, and I will try to do it. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions on the process or anything. Go support me on all my links. All of them are down below. Thanks for watching.